Hello, everyone. Hello. Hi. Hello. I like the audience engagement. Good evening, everyone. It's so great to be here with all of you, a packed house for our next and final conversation of the night. I'm Hope King, Axios' senior business reporter, and I have the great pleasure of moderating our next conversation with not one, but two leaders in fashion, apparel, and retail who have been at the forefront of sustainability before it's became really the buzzword that we're all, of course, familiar with now and talking about today. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the CEO of Patagonia, Ryan Gellert, and the CEO of EILEEN Fisher, Lisa Williams. Perfect. So both of our speakers today are also models for their brands, in case you want to tag them on their Instagram, and you can shop from there if that is something that you are inclined to do. But Lisa and Ryan, thank you so much for being with us at Axios House. I guess I had to begin with a big question, which is really, planet Earth doesn't have a Venmo account. It doesn't have a Zelle. How is it that you can make money while actually doing good for the planet?
I want to start with me. That's the holy grail. That's what we're doing all day, every day, is trying to figure out that puzzle, to be able to be in business, do it well, do it profitably, and do some good along the way. And it's not easy. It's a combination of a lot of efforts. You got to have financial success. You've got to do the right thing for your people, for the people in your supply chain and your value chain. You've got to do right in terms of your raw material sourcing and your decisions with planet Earth in mind. And it's a constant juggling match to make it happen, and to make it happen in an integrated way.
Yeah, no, I'll just say, first of all, it is so wonderful to be here with you. Lisa and I, as I think you may know, worked together for about 8 years at Patagonia. So to be able to do this event together with Lisa, who's now running EILEEN Fisher, is really wonderful. The other thing I'll say quickly is just did shot to make her smart backstage. So there's just this warm glow, both from walking out here and from that as well.
That was supposed to be a secret.
But now to the question. You know, our mission statement at Patagonia is we're in business to save our home planet. And I think your question hits on both pieces. We are really committed to running our business, making the very best product that we can, making it of the highest quality, doing everything we can to kind of change the system within which we operate in the apparel sector. Quality, use of materials, fair trade certification in our factories, repair at scale, resale at scale, end of life, and with the change in ownership structure a couple of years ago, giving all of our profits to fight the climate and ecological crisis. But it is the combination of those two things. We're in business to save our home planet, and I think EILEEN Fisher has got a very similar set of values.
I did not partake in the shot, in case anyone was
You could
curious.
have.
I will wait. I will wait. I want to read you something that Patagonia wrote, and this is something really that I think gets back to the heart of the question, which is Patagonia saying, everything we make takes something from the planet we can't give back. So again, the question is, I'm skeptical that it's actually possible to do both. Because I think fundamentally, if you're making money, that means you are taking resources, you are putting it into the supply chain, and then you are potentially creating waste. So I guess if you know this at the heart, then I guess why even be in business?
It's a great question. It's one we've wrestled with for 51 years, and here's the answer, as imperfect as it is. We're not a sustainable company. We don't describe ourselves that way. Sustainability is taking less from a system than it can regenerate, and that doesn't define how we are able to run our business today. If anything, we're a responsible company in that we really sweat the details on the decisions that we make. And the big idea behind Patagonia, it's not the money that we've given away or the eco-engineering and R&D development that we've open sourced or anything else. It's truly this belief that perhaps by operating from within the business sector, we can be a model for just thinking about the role and the responsibility of business differently. I would say at 51 years, we haven't proven that yet, but perhaps we've made a small dent in the space, and our ambition continues.
So just so I'm clear, you don't want to be called a sustainable company, is that
That's not a term that we use to describe ourselves at all.
EILEEN, I'm sure you get this a lot, Lisa. Do you agree that you don't want to be considered as EILEEN Fisher a sustainable company then?
We try to make sustainable decisions all day, every day, but the idea of being a sustainable company, to Ryan's point, is really not possible. So being a responsible company and doing the best that we can to prove out the business model, likewise, is the point.
One of the things that I told you guys beforehand, before talk, is that I would be wearing Rent the Runway, the bottom, and I am wearing Nuuly, I think, or Mod Lux, one of the others, on the top. But somebody pointed out to me that even renting clothes has an environmental impact, which is a huge bummer. Obviously, I'm thinking about the shipping costs. So if you were to live the most responsible life that you could as someone who consumes food and clothing, what would that look like?
It's all about a conversation of conscious consumption and minimal consumption whenever possible. So my daughter is a big Nuuly fan as well. We have a resale model at EILEEN Fisher that we've been doing since 2009, taking back our products. And so it's true, there is no perfect answer. And so it's about being thoughtful and conscious consumers whenever possible. And that's part of this model that we're trying to prove out in both companies is trying to make thoughtful choices, buy less, buy one, buy the best, those types of things. And, you know, it's as a business, it's trying to create tools and education around conscious consumption. I was telling Ryan earlier, we have a couple of things that we've just launched, a seasonal planner as an example, small example, where you can get a look at what's coming in future months so you can make a wise decision as to which one you want and when you might want it. Some tools like that, a closet where you can actually catalog what you might have already in your closet to figure out what you need to supplement it. So it's about that kind of education as well, but recognizing that even with the best raw materials, the best supply chain, it is ultimately not sustainable that way.
So you're saying it starts with the consumer demand?
It's a huge piece of it,
okay.
and we're two different companies meeting different demands for sure, but it's about trying to sort of, it's a relationship between both the company and the consumer.
I wanted to get there right now because you brought it up. Have you heard of the underconsumption core trend online?
I've heard of some version of that in a bunch of different descriptions, no growth, and you know, the basic set of ideals of really making conscious decisions about what impact you have, particularly through purchasing and consumption, yeah.
And do you think that trend will win out? I mean, you have on the one side fast fashion, you have influencers throwing posts in my feed that I didn't ask for, that I don't want, and then you have this new sort of backlash this year emerging with people taking videos of shoes they've had in their closet for 12 years saying, it's perfectly fine to wear this until the soles fall out. Which side will win? The consumption of, you know, all the stuff that influencers are making money off of, or this trend that seems to be in response?
I mean, I'll say this, and I'll steal a quote from Winston Churchill talking about Americans, which is, you can always count on Americans to do the right thing when they've exhausted every other option. And I think that there's something similar here with humanity, candidly, in the face of the climate and ecological crisis. We will have influencers, we will have race to the bottom thinking and business models. You know, today's Shein is yesterday something else and tomorrow something else again. That's the system within which we operate. And there is something on a cellular level with us as humans that sort of triggers that behavior. And we are steadily moving towards a world where there are no more virgin resources and where the costs of making the decisions that we have made as humans are clear and so high that we won't have the option of continuing to do that. So at some point we'll get there. The question is whether we will get there on our own terms or not. And I'm not sure how that'll play through.
And I do think, go ahead, Lisa.
I was just going to say, you're exactly right. And up until the time our hand is forced, I do feel like there's a great momentum building around resale, secondhand, and understanding. Certainly the next generation customer that everybody's always talking about appreciates that more than the average customer. They're skeptical, more so than the average customer, which is amazing and great because it requires all of us to be on our toes and to be authentic and transparent with what we're doing. But there is a great momentum building. Secondhand is becoming, a norm and a mainstream, which is at least a great sign.
Yeah, I definitely want to get to the supply chain aspect of how you actually scale responsibility, if not sustainability. But first, I wanted to kind of go through more on the consumer side in the thinking. And I was on both of Patagonia and Eileen Fisher's website last night, just seeing what were the best sellers. Everything on Eileen Fisher's best-selling page was over $100. Most. I won't say all, sorry, most. And I was looking at Patagonia's best-selling Better Sweater Jacket, which is $159, and the infamous VC Vest, which is $119. Is sustainability only for the rich?
Oh, I think not at all. But I think the true cost of apparel, is really the issue. And I think if you frame that question of, is our stuff more expensive than other options in the marketplace? Unapologetically. Is our stuff engineered with use of materials and where and how it's built, how people are paid to build it, repair and service on the back end, in an active, vibrant resale market opportunity? That's the model that we have. And so I think if you look at the true cost of apparel and play that through across the space, I feel really good about the business that we run. I also understand that we make decisions daily to really moderate the pace at which we grow, because we're hypersensitive about the impact that we're having through growth. And candidly, we don't always get it right relative to when do we talk about new products, when do we talk about product that's off price, and the seasonal nature of the business that we're in. That's one of the big challenges.
So how do you, Lisa, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's a super fair question given the price points of the brands. I do think when we think about secondhand and the resale platforms that we both have, it's a really approachable way to get into the brand, and that has been helpful in sort of addressing the retail challenges.
Let's talk about resale right now. So you, at Eileen Fisher, you have home decor from materials that you guys have taken back. You have artwork, which we can talk about. This is the Waste No More studies series. How do you scale on the back end these taken? And you recently at the company reached over 2 million products that were actually taken back from customers. And I know there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into building that.
Indeed, the idea of scaling that and doing that in a business model that makes it efficient to do so is a real challenge. So first and foremost, we feel a strong responsibility for everything that we put out there. So we're happy to take it back. We have been encouraging it since 2009. That's not to say that we don't end up with so much. So to your point, we're at 2.3 million to date right now, and finding the right home for those things. Of that, only 50% of it is sort of resellable. And so you've got a lot of other product coming back with it that we have a responsibility to disposition in a way that is responsible. So that's a big challenge. A lot of damages that come through in there. So repairing when you can, finding upcycling ways to take the discarded product and use fiber to fiber technology so that we can put those inputs back into new product is a challenge. There's infrastructure scalability issues there that are tremendous. We've got a couple of those coming to market in the next couple of months, so it's doable. But to your point, the scalability is a real challenge. So keeping a hold and your arms around what's coming back as quickly as it is, and being responsible with that, is in fact something that is a cost to the business in general. It is not a profit center in any way. That
was going to be my next question. Are those lines of businesses profitable?
They are not. They're not. In a best case scenario, the way we're doing it right now, the resale is a small portion of our business, so it's literally 2% of the business. We're working very hard to scale that, but it's worth it. We are all in. We are fully invested in it. But finding a way to integrate that business model in a way that is cost effective is a big challenge when you sort of have that moniker of trying to do the responsible thing.
And at Patagonia, is it also a cost center?
Yeah, I'll talk about two pieces. One is repair and the other is resale. So on the repair side, we operate, if it's not the biggest, it's one of the biggest apparel repair centers in North America. We employ over 100 people that do full-time product repair in Reno, Nevada. We also have repair vehicles that are on the road doing events, and we do it in retail, so that's just a part of it. We spend, I would estimate, about $20 million a year on product repair, and it's 100% investment. So we're not making any money on that, and that's always been the model. On the resale side, our ambition is for that to be a profitable channel. And it's not because we need the profitability, it's to prove that this can be done so that ultimately it can scale. It represents about 1% of revenue today. We're continuing to invest actually in right now through the fall in these 2-week release cycles where we're creating functionality on our website. It's inspired by, it's probably the only flattering thing I'll say about Amazon, both tonight and ever, but the way that they make buying secondhand books accessible, I believe must lead to a world where there's less virgin books printed. And that's the idea that we're aspiring for with apparel. And so the functionality, both logistically and technically, that we're seeking to roll out in our experience is, if you're looking at a black medium nano puff jacket and we have that exact model secondhand, it will flag that that item is available. If we have something similar, it will flag that we have something similar available. So we're trying to create that kind of visibility and optionality for our customers. And the big idea here is to try to create a model that has people thinking about, do I really need this? And if so, is there a secondhand option? And by the way, if they choose to buy something new or used, is it replacing something in their closet, and can we get it out of the closet into a more productive use as well? So that's ultimately the change we're trying to drive.
Yeah, I think some authors would not like that, but
fair enough. And I was just going to say that the scalability of that and the combination of new and used is the business model that's going to have to be the case when you start talking about growth and degrowth and, you know, carbon targets and all of those sorts of things. Some level of that is going to need to level out, but it's not there yet.
All right, really quickly, what do you need as a brand to have the infrastructure in place to do this at scale, just to put some ideas out there? Where should startups be investing the technology for take back or for cleaning or for returning yarn back into something that can be reused? Where are the biggest needs?
I think recyclability, and that's a very generic and broad term, but particularly in our space, it's around synthetics and it's around mixed materials. Those are the two most persistent problems that we navigate. And so there is a lot of technological advancement in those spaces, but I think we're still a decade from kind of having solutions that really create the sort of circularity of product in, product out that I think would serve us best.
Absolutely agree. The fiber-to-fiber recycling piece of it, where we can do it at scale without having to detrim and to know the componentry of the garments that are actually being recycled. It's a real sort of black hole right now, but that's the linchpin right there.
Before we get to our last topic, what is the most BS label out there? Is it conscious, eco-friendly? What are some of the other
sustainable?
Okay. Any other labels that we should just absolutely
green
on clothing? And
look, maybe I'll answer the question differently and say this. You've made the point that it's incredibly complicated to understand how to make conscious purchasing decisions. I think that that's not an accident. And I think that the fact that there hasn't been kind of collaboration at an industry level, there also hasn't been collaboration at an industry level around creating policy that sets standards, I think is really a problem. And I think it's also really an opportunity. It's why we've been involved, both of our companies have been involved in trying to help influence the creation and ultimately the passage of the New York Fashion Act for 3+ years. I think that the industry needs policy and regulation to define what good looks like in a relatively, if not perfectly, level playing field. But I don't think it's an accident that customers find it so confusing to navigate their shopping experience, particularly in apparel.
Agreed. It's the standards, the definition. Often, even when we're trying to figure out what to call the products that we're making, we're grading our own papers, so to speak. I mean, we're using our own definitions of good and green and sustainable and all those things. So policy and standards, 100%.
Both companies are pretty unapologetic when it comes to taking a stance on civic engagement and especially directing voters toward specific party-specific values. Patagonia today released a new campaign around the election. We have some video. I'm going to roll it first and then we'll talk. That's smart. That's smart brevity right there. I mean, if you need anything, I recently wrote a story looking at some data from Gallup. Just 38% of the public now think that businesses in general should take a public stance on current events, and that is down 10 percentage points from 2022. And neither brands are backing down from this. Why?
It's too urgent. The problem is too large. The urgency is there. We have been at EILEEN Fisher, certainly at Patagonia, speaking out for decades about climate change, climate realities, social welfare, all of those things. And when you look at what's happening right now, you look at the political landscape, you look at the issues that are on the ballot, this is absolutely not the time to be silent, regardless of that sentiment. It's been a part of the values of EILEEN's company for years. It's her personal values, and this is just not the time to sit it out.
Hi. Okay.
I would say this, first of all, I think that the positions that you've both taken at EILEEN Fisher and articulated in the long-form way that you've done it, I think are commendable. I think it's incredible. I think we take a sort of a visual approach to this. To try to kind of reach out to our customers and recognize that the messages don't land with everybody. But I'll say this, number one, we're a 51-year company. We took out ads in the local Ventura newspapers in 1978, that's 45 years ago, give or take, suggesting that people in the community made their voting, first of all, voted, and second of all, made decisions based on what was best for the local community through the lens of environmentalism. Since 2000, we have been steadily encouraging our customers and communities around the world to vote the planet. In 2016, we co-founded Time to Vote, thinking that maybe we could get together 100 companies to encourage their employees to have access to voting. We ended up today, there's over 2,000 companies that are a part of that, and that movement continues to grow. And so, we have, for a couple of election cycles, have closed our entire business, retail stores included, to make sure that our employees have access to voting. This year, we're actually doing that on October 29th, which is pre-voting or early voting day, and we're encouraging our employees and our communities to get active in helping ensure that others have access to vote. That is often described as partisan. I just see it as practical.
And I don't want to leave out EILEEN Fisher. You also the brand released this year's sort of election push and the messaging there. If you want to go through that a little bit.
Your choice has power, and it's about the issues that are relevant in this particular one. And to your point, this is not meant to be more divisive. It's not meant to be inflammatory. It is about, EILEEN has stood for values and has tried to create a values-driven company, and this election is way more about values than it is about politics.
Before we get to the fun question, when you look at John Deere, Ford, Harley Davidson releasing public statements that state we are taking a step back from DE&I, what goes through your mind? Is there now an emergence of red companies and blue companies?
You know, I think I'd love to tell you no, but I don't really believe that. I think that...
So yes, there's an emergence of red companies.
I want to be real careful in not painting those three companies as one or the other, because that's not my place. What I would say is this: our society and our culture is more polarized now than ever. I think that there is a real scorched earth approach that, particularly around the campaigns against those three companies, each of which has weathered that differently. I think the first folded quickly, the second shortly thereafter, and the third stood in there a bit longer and focused on the substance of their commitments, not necessarily all the language around it. I think that it is incredibly unfortunate that companies taking positions on issues that are for the betterment of everybody are all of a sudden defined as political or polarizing. And at the same time, I really appreciate the exhaustion that everybody is feeling through what the country has navigated for the last 8 or 10 years. And so it's difficult, but if your question is a bit more direct on what is Patagonia going to do, we're going to continue to show up with a clear orientation about we're in business to save our home planet. The environmental lens will lead, and the other area that we're incredibly focused on is supporting our employees. That's who we are. That's what we do for 51 years and for the next 51, come hell or high water.
Did you want anything to add?
Exactly the same approach. EILEEN has had, values that stood for climate, for social, for women's empowerment, and all of those things are on the ballot this time around, and we will continue to speak out on them and ask people to make choices based on those values that are hopefully their values.
I'm standing in the way between drinks. I realize that. One fun question for each of you. My partner and I, we get into fights all the time. I'm on the brink of divorce every time he wants to throw something out because I want to hold on to it. What is one thing that you have held on to that you are proud of, or that you feel a little embarrassed saying that you've held on to it for so long for sustainability or responsible reasons?
I mean, I can tell you, well, just since it's between the three of us, I've got this old blue Patagonia fleece that is, I mean, God, it's ugly. But I've had the thing for decades and done climbing trips in Northwest China and different places in it. And so I've got all these old photos and memories and everything else. And so from a functionality perspective, I got a lot of things that perform better today. From a fashion perspective, it may be the most god-awful piece in my entire house, but I've held on to it for those reasons.
You'll have to post it online. What about you, Lisa?
It's going to have to be a Patagonia product, too. It's an old pair of ski pants that my children are appalled that I wear. They're so old that they should come with an underwire. They are crazy, but they still work, and just on principle, those are the ones that I'm going to wear until I can no longer wear them.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us, Lisa and Ryan. Thank you as well for joining us live here in person and online. Don't forget, tomorrow morning we have a live viewing of Biden's United Nations address, followed by in-person analysis with guests from the White House and the UN. And in the afternoon, we have the youngest Nobel Prize laureate in history, Malala Yousafzai. She is joining us for a special conversation. So if you'd like to catch that, watch it online or try to come back here tomorrow. Thank you all so much. Enjoy.